I also want to ask you a little bit about your college experience. We could go way down the AI rabbit hole, and maybe we'll have to have a separate conversation about this at some point. But I also want to ask you, because you alluded earlier in our conversation to how much you've learned starting a business. And I've had a lot of conversations on this podcast and will continue to do so, as people listening who've listened to multiple episodes know, about college specifically and the value of college, or the lack thereof of value of college for some students. Um, and I'm really curious about, you've had, again, to go back to the beginning of our conversation, you have had the very stereotypical experience, even if you don't feel like you're necessarily the stereotypical representative of the experience. Like, you went to the college to get into, if you're super academic and ambitious. You weren't there super long because COVID happened and the lockdowns happened, and you went back to New York and started. I assume you were taking online classes for a while before you stopped altogether to start building Curious Cardinals. So you actually got multiple sides of the experience. Like, you got the in-person, very traditional version, you got the remote version enabled by the 21st century and the internet, and then you left altogether to go start a company. And I've had a lot of conversations with people. I've had some people on the show who are advocates against college altogether and are helping support kids who want to drop out and go do something else. I had a conversation a few weeks ago with my friend Michael Gibson, who runs 1517 Fund, which is an investment fund that backs young people building companies instead of going to school. He used to help run the Teal Fellowship, which pays kids to drop out of school. So I've had some people on who are very harsh critics of college. I've also talked to people who've immensely benefited from their college experience and are really strong advocates for. And you were on a super traditional path pre dropping out and starting your company. And so I imagine you're probably still, I mean, you want to go back to Stanford someday. I imagine that you're still very pro college, but at the same time, you also made it sound like you've learned a ton of things building a company that you weren't learning in a classroom. And so I'm very curious about how you would describe the difference between the types of education that you were getting at Stanford versus the type of education that you're getting now in the real world building a company, and also how you think of the benefit of both types of education. Like, do you feel like, had this idea not occurred to you, that taking the traditional path and finishing your Stanford degree would have been equally useful to what you're doing now? Would it have been useful to a different set of potential outcomes and trajectories? Knowing what you know now, would you even have gone to Stanford at all? Or would you have been like, no, I'm totally going straight into starting a company because that's way more useful? Are you somewhere in the middle? Like, how do you think about the relationship between these two very distinct types of education that you've spent your early post high school years getting?
You are getting at the core of my deep philosophical thinking that I don't usually talk about publicly. I will blanket statement answer. My initial answer is every kid is different. Just as I said, our whole thing is let's meet kids where they're at. Every kid needs something different. So I'm not going to go out here and say this is it or this isn't right for anyone, because just every kid needs something different. I will say that, and I will also, there's so many undertones of privilege and opportunity here that I will just say, let's table that, because that's a whole other aspect of college and this conversation and my belief set on this. And all of our mentors are in college. Our mentors are so phenomenal, so inspiring. And I will reveal that how I think about Curious Cardinals is a little bit of a Trojan horse approach, that we a little bit need to work within the system and gain trust within it to dismantle the system. And so, as you've talked about unschooling, yes, some people, and I'm awesome, some people are ready to abandon these belief sets that have been ingrained in them from an early day, and it's easy for them to do that, and they're comfortable being that bold, and that's so awesome, and I so admire and respect that. And then there's other people who are really uncomfortable with it. When I go to the East Coast, and it's more on the West Coast that people clap or think it's cool that I've left Stanford. Some people why'd you leave Stanford? And I'm I had this amazing opportunity and it's so much greater than myself and the impact we were having. Why'd you leave? Like, they do not get it. I joke because I am from New York. I do think there is an East Coast, West Coast divide when it comes to kind of this how radical or nonlinear paths you take. Some people completely don't get it. They're like, you have that prize. You have the thing we're all working towards. Why would you leave it? And I guess when I say the Trojan horse approach that we're aiming to take is, I really hope one day we can say, to be the most inspiring mentor, you don't have to be at Stanford or Harvard. You can be a dropout. You can have never gone to school. You can be from any and all. And our mentors are already so diverse. Most of our mentors who teach the most hours are actually first-generation low-income college students who happen to be at Stanford and Harvard. But that's what I believe. I don't think that that's the badge of honor. I don't want anyone to strive for that and I think that's the same with like any name brand. There's some risk or discomfort people feel in going to work at a startup that most people don't know about. And when you tell them where you work, it's their first time hearing it. Like, there's a lot of comfort in what's known and what's institutionalized. And I think that this is where even conversations about education, I think, are challenging, because ultimately it all comes down to philosophy. What do people believe education is meant to do? Like, what is the purpose of education? And I think that's a lot of where the breakdown happens too, because people have such different belief sets. So they think that we're trying to accomplish such different things. And so then we're all speaking over each other, and then let alone how convoluted it is and how hard it is to change this antiquated bureaucratic system. So in that same vein, like with the college question, it's you whatever you believe in, whatever you're striving for. Like, I'm not here to tell you to espouse some great beliefs and judge anyone for doing what they're doing. I think everyone do you. But I do think that I am learning so much doing something that has stakes. I am learning so much doing something without a manual or textbook to guide me. And frankly, I learned when I started managing people that I have ADHD, and I realized, like, oh, that's why I literally transcribe conversations. I read best while walking or annotating, even if I'm in bed. Like, all these things made sense. I am the type of person who, I love cooking. I cannot look at a recipe for the life of me. Like, it's literally, I've never, when I build like a battery or so, I never read instructions or recipe. It's like my mind gets shut down. And so I'm definitely someone who thrives in a more entrepreneurial setting where like there is no playbook, and that inspires and excites me, and I'm ready to, so everyone's different. Whereas my sister and I think it's so fun to actually have people cook together. That's one of our team bonding activities we often do, because it says so much about someone's personality, how they show up in a kitchen. I like, my cutting's not neat. Our head of engineering, I'm like, whenever I see him cutting in the kitchen, I'm like, that's why you're our head of engineering. Never seen a cucumber cut so beautifully. So I just say that because I think everyone's different and everyone's own purpose and passion is actualized in their own way. But I don't think that I needed Stanford to build something in the world. If anything, it might have lured me more in the system, and it might have made it harder for me to step out and kind of take this nonlinear path. I even hear a lot of Stanford kids say, like, I'm going to do this like side hustle in order to be ready to be a founder. Like, there's no degree. I laugh too when I hear people talk about, like, you didn't have a business degree. How do you know how to start a company? Like, I think that you learn so much by doing, and that's what I believe. And if we can create a model where kids can learn by doing, and we can believe in kids, like, there can almost be like default innocent assumption, default belief, like that you're capable of this. And we create an environment where people believe they're capable of things and put themselves out there and don't think they need any degree to do so, then that's what I hope for. But if someone wants the degree or they want to learn XYZ thing, like, I just think that, and some school settings are more project-based learning than others, but I don't think that what I learned at Stanford set me up to do this. I don't think the 3 more years would have made me any more qualified to be an entrepreneur. If anything, the biggest thing I missed out on was this social environment of such amazing, I love my friends, I love people, like a community of such incredible individuals that I got to spend time with. Like, I missed out on that, but the learning itself to set me up to accomplish my goals in life. I think if anything, I learned that I unlearned so much in taking this path instead.